Welcome to another insightful episode of Asilimeni Maswati. I'm Mngadi, and in this episode, I sit down with BHEKIZWE MAZIYA, CEO of NAMBoard, for a deep conversation on the institution's vital role in Eswatini's agricultural sector. We explore his journey as CEO, his achievements, challenges, and the impact of NAMBoard's programs on farmers across the country. Our discussion covers a range of topics, including the role of youth in agriculture, cold chain management services and their importance for market access, the Global Gap program and what it means for export-driven farmers, the Horticulture Revolving Fund, a game changer for commercial farmers, the input subsidy and its support for small-scale farmers, the Horticulture Information System, which helps farmers make data-driven decisions. Join me as we unpack these crucial issues and explore how NAMBoard is shaping the future of agriculture in Eswatini. Stay tuned. So, Mr. MAZIYA, we really appreciate your opportunity to welcome us to your office to talk about all things agriculture, especially where NAMBoard is concerned.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we want to start by looking at your journey. I know you've worked in many places where the country strategically has placed you in development, especially economic development of the country.
Yes.
You've worked for Youth Fund, you've worked for Swazi Bank. I think I've checked, you've also worked for Royal Eswatini Sugar Corporation at some point.
Right.
So you have been at the forefront of development. So now you're at NAMBoard. I think you are going to 3 years in the position of CEO. How has it been? What has been the successes since you've been around? What can you tell us about what you've achieved so far?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mngadi. Yes, the journey has been quite long, but yes, as we are focusing with NAMBoard, one would highlight of key highlights in terms of successes. When the former Minister for Agriculture, Honorable Jabulani Mabuza, appointed me as the CEO for NAMBoard, one key assignment that he gave me was that each time I go to Parliament, the members of Parliament sing praises to the other parastatals under me, except for NAMBoard. I always get complaints about services from NAMBoard. So he said, as you sit on that CEO seat, please make sure that you change that attitude, change the stakeholder perception for NAMBoard. Farmers are complaining about NAMBoard. Of key highlight is the late payment for the farmers. That's the key highlight. So he said, that's what I want you to do the first day you sit there. So when I arrived here, I sat down with our team to look at the challenges. There were a book full of challenges that were known to the organization. And each time you go out to farmers' meetings, you'll hear all sorts of problems that farmers are complaining about NAMBoard. So we drew up our strategic plan for the 3-year period to say we want to change the situation. So number one, now talking to success stories. We managed in the first 1.5 years, we were able to kill the farmer payments turnaround time. That is our flagship in terms of success stories, where we were able to now pay farmers within 14 days. From 6 months worst case situation, farmers were delayed payments by up to 6 months. So now I can tell you with confidence, we pay every farmer within 14 days. Some are getting paid in 7 days, some are getting paid in 4 days if the load is not that much. So that is our key success story as
a big
NAMBoard.
achievement,
And no farmer today you would be heard complaining about delayed payments.
Sure.
Secondly, farmers would complain about poor produce collection from NAMBoard, where we would be said to be advising farmers to harvest and do not come to collect on the same day, and produce would get spoiled and gets rejected at the end of the day. So now we are collecting 100% farmers on the day of harvesting.
Okay.
So these are some of our successes that we are now counting. As well as one would mention the issue of the digitalization.
Sure.
Our transformation strategy is focusing on how we can digitize our services. We introduced the Eswatini Horticulture Information System to now enable farmers to interact with us electronically. That's one of our successes. We will talk more about it at a later stage. But the introduction of that service. One would also count on our service delivery to the farmers. We are in a trajectory to decentralize our services as NAMBoard. And as a result, we are now able to sell some of our services through our decentralized centers. We call them pack houses.
Pack houses.
Yes. So now you can buy some of our farming inputs from our central pack houses. You can buy farmers' produce from our pack houses. We are also getting deeper to assist the farmers in terms of mechanization. One of the key challenges farmers were facing was that they can't farm large scale because of the shortage of machinery for mechanization. Government's machinery is focused on maize farmers. So horticulture farmers did not have access to affordable machinery. So as NAMBoard, we are rolling out that service. We are now able to provide tractor hire services with farming implements to enable farmers to commercialize at a larger scale. So one would mention those key highlights as our successes as NAMBoard. But the bigger picture of it is that the image of NAMBoard has been changed to the positive side.
Wow. No, it's amazing. I think you are actually saying the problems associated with NAMBoard perception have actually been eradicated, as it were. And then what did you have to do to achieve that? I think because these are problems that have lingered for some years. But you came in and kind of sorted the issue of payments. It would seem that farmers started complaining about it 20 years ago. But you came and then changed that in a few months.
It hasn't been easy, Mr. Mradi. Sometimes it will call for one not to sleep. Sometimes it will call for one to pick up resistance from some of the stakeholders internally. But the strategic direction was the key driver. And ensuring that we all live up to our strategy, as well as ensuring that a performance-oriented culture, without measurement of performance, one cannot tell whether you are doing well or not. So that's another area we improved to measure our performance so that we reflect to those that are not performing and take the necessary steps to those that do not perform. So and the consistency as well. Those were the major game changers to us.
No, thank you. You've done well. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I think farmers are already experiencing. I think we did an interview with some young people doing horticulture as well in Luve. So when I asked them about the relationship with NAMBoard, they're all singing praises and say, you know, we are set. All we have to do is just to focus on our farming. And NAMBoard will do the rest. So I think if we hear from the farmer, it gives us that comfort that, you know, things are already changing. So, so thank you for that. Now, just speaking about the same story, how is NAMBoard, because we're thinking around inclusive growth as a country, and NAMBoard is there to support the farmer to grow. But just focusing on young people and their involvement in the value chains and all, what is NAMBoard done in that regard?
From my background in youth development,
Yes.
one would say we have not achieved much when it comes to support for the youth.
For the youth, yeah.
Knowing the population of the youth in the country, and when you look at the statistics for youth that are in agriculture today, in particular at NAMBoard, the figures are too low. So it is in that regard that I'm saying we have not done much, because the percentage of young people practicing agriculture is still low. Nevertheless, we are making attempts. We do have those young people who are in agriculture. We do provide that extended support to them, with the understanding that they still need the mentorship, they still need the guidance over and above the technical support. Young people also need the guidance. They still take miscalculated decisions. So without the guidance from an experienced somebody, they miss out on a lot of things. So we do support young people. We do have quite a number of them that are successful. However, the numbers are still low, and we are still encouraging more and more young people to come on board. We do have we have introduced services that are friendly to the youth, in particular financial services that do not require collateral and deposits to the young people, which they do not have. So those are services and products that are aimed at supporting young people to venture into agriculture.
Are we talking about the horticulture revolving fund?
Yes, we have two financial products that we introduced. One being the horticulture revolving fund that is housed at Eswatini Bank. It is aimed at increasing access to funding by farmers generally, horticulture farmers. That is in terms of loans which farmers want to borrow. We de-risked the product when we engaged the banks. You know, banks are always risk averse. I've been a banker myself, so I know banks thinking. So our approach was to de-risk the product to the bank by providing an additional guarantee, and also tapping into the Eswatini Central Bank guarantee scheme. So that the bank is fully covered. So we are contributing an additional guarantee to the bank, so that the loans are now 100% guaranteed.
So that's the small scale credit guarantee scheme.
That's right. That's right. So farmers are able to borrow without the need for contribution from their side, be it collateral, be it a deposit. Over and above that, one of the challenges young people are facing, and not only young people, SMEs in general, it is the lack of capacity to develop business plans. That is a challenge to SMEs, that is a challenge to young entrepreneurs. So we have realized that despite de-risking and removing collateral and deposits to the revolving fund, the uptake still remained low. The requirement for business plan has been found to be a hindrance to them. So we engaged an officer that is focusing on assisting the farmers to develop the business plans in alignment with the requirements of the bank. So that is another support which young people and small SMEs can tap into in order to make it easy to access the revolving fund. We also have a horticulture input subsidy.
Yes.
That is also aimed at meeting the farmers 40% with farming inputs. The farmers contribute 60% and NAMBoard contributes 40%.
Okay.
That is free funds. They are non-refundable. The purpose is to ensure that the cost of production is reduced by the farmer. As you are aware from the Ukraine-Russia impasse,
yes.
farming inputs cost escalated excessively high.
Yeah.
So even if you are buying the inputs through a loan, they are still expensive.
Yeah.
So if a farmer is tapping into the input subsidy, it makes the production cost lower such that the farmer is able to sell the end product at a competitive price that would attract markets. So these are some of the services which we are saying financially they are supporting farmers to make it easy for them to produce.
Wow. So that's very important. I think we are aware that, as you say, young people in particular need a lot of hand-holding. And I think the initiatives that you have put in place are speaking to that, trying to reach out to the young person and say, okay, let's do this. And having an officer in-house, I think it does help. But, Eswatini is a small country, but it's also big in terms of, people being scattered across the country in terms of farming. Yeah. Is the capacity enough, or have you also explored, partnership with other service providers? If you can mention people that are in the space of helping with business plans, like people like SETCO, if they can come on board and help in this regard.
Thank you. We are in partnership with SETCO. We work together with them.
Sure.
We are also collaborating with the Financial Services Center for Financial Inclusion.
CFI.
Yes, they also do provide that capacity to farmers, in particular towards business plan development and access to funding. So far, those are the ones we work much closely with to support the farmers in other ways, except for marketing and extension service.
Great. Just take us through how many pack houses do we have now in the country?
Thank you. In total, we have 4 main pack houses.
Okay.
We have a pack house at our central market in Ngabeni.
Yes.
We have a pack house at Hawane. We have a pack house at Sahweni.
Yes.
We have a pack house at Lavumisa. Then we have other satellite cold storage facilities.
Okay.
We have one at Lomahasha. We have other ones in Mahlanya. We have another one at Mbabane. Or I forgot to mention pack house at Hlangano.
Yeah.
We also have a main pack house. It means there are 5. I had forgotten that one.
Like a route, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Those pack houses were established through support from the European Union.
Yes.
So the satellite cold storage facilities are aimed at bringing the cold chain facility closer to the farmers, as well as the vendors.
Yeah.
We also have another one in Manzini town. It's another satellite cold storage. So we've got quite a number of them. And as you listen to the location of most of them, they are located much closer to the border gates.
Yes.
To ensure that the farmers, once they harvest their produce, it would be stored in the cold facilities to enable transportation for export purposes.
Okay.
So that it's easier to exit through the respective border gates to markets, in particular in South Africa. Okay.
Yeah. So how's that going? Are we able to export much of our produce here? Because I think the main issue, there's the reason I'm asking the question, there has been the discussion nationally that we are importing a lot.
Yeah.
But of course, it's interesting to find out that we have a vision for export of same.
Oh yes.
So how is that going?
Then you, before I get to this question, I also forgot to mention that still within the cold chain facilities, we also have refrigerated trucks.
Yeah.
Where we collect the produce from farm gate.
Okay.
To the pack houses. This is aimed at ensuring that the produce maintains its quality immediately after harvesting by the farmer.
Yes.
As you transport the produce through cold chain vehicles, it ensures that the produce starts the cold chain value chain instantly.
Yeah.
By the time it gets to the cold room, already it has cooled down and maintaining the proper temperature that is required to keep it at the required quality. As well as when we transport it to the market, it still gets transported through the cold chain vehicles so that it gets to the market while still fresh and while still in good quality. You are now asking about exports and imports. You'll also remember, Mr. Mgwadi, that we are, on the other hand, a regulator.
Yeah.
By regulating, we try to maintain a balance between demand and supply in the local markets. Where when there's excess produce, we restrict importation of those particular goods.
Yes.
So that markets buy from local farmers.
Yes.
When there is shortage, we then provide import permits so that the produce can come in, so that there is always a balance in the market. What we see on the statistics is still a very sad observation, where as a country we are still a net importer of horticulture produce. What is produced locally is still very low to supply the local demand.
Yeah.
As much as we do have quite a number of products that are exported to South Africa in the horticulture space, but there are more products that are imported into the country.
Yeah.
So to us, we then one would quickly mention that over and above the fact that we still do not have enough farmers producing to supply local markets.
Yeah.
Local produce find itself competing heavily with produce coming from other countries, in particular South Africa.
Yes.
Mainly because produce coming from South Africa is enjoying substantial subsidies from government of South Africa. The farmers in South Africa are farming in large scales, and they benefit from the economies of scale, and they are able to sell at a far lower price than our farmers. It is expensive to produce in Eswatini, so the price that would yield profits to a local farmer would be much higher than the price produced by a farmer in the neighboring countries. So that's the dilemma that our farmers are experiencing, which as a country we do need to, our service for with the input subsidy is trying to mitigate against such, as well as to promote and support our farmers to produce at a larger scale. Yes. The mechanization service is aimed at enabling farmers to farm at larger scale, without having to labor in pain, in hard labor. So we are trying to mitigate those challenges so that it becomes much cheaper to produce locally, and the produce competes fairly with produce. Then we will be able to say Maswati Asilimeni Maswati, because we will be having farmers that are able to supply local demand sustainably.
Yes.
What we are currently observing is we have a niche market as a country, in particular for baby vegetables.
Okay.
So those are the in the horticulture space, in particular vegetables. Those are the commodities that gets exported more than conventional vegetables.
Right.
We are also seeing a lot of banana, citrus, getting exported to South Africa, and all the likes.
Oh, great! It's promising. I think we're making the right moves, and what the strides are actually significant. But looking into the future, would you say that we will see possibly as soon as possible a reduction on the imports? And I think as we speak to that, you can also share kind of the latest figures of how much the value of the imports, as it were.
Thank you. There is light at the end of the tunnel. We are seeing a reduction in the figures. However, to reduce import figures from 2.3 billion is
billion?
It's not so easy.
Per year?
Per year. So those are the current year statistics that we have. Although we are seeing a reduction in terms of the millions on the far end, but it is still above 2 billion worth of imports for scheduled products. So meaning the pace is still low, the reduction is still minute, but at least we are seeing a reduction in the figures. We are seeing an increase in local production. As you would recall that currently since the 1st of December, we restricted importation of butternut up to today.
Green pepper as well, I think I saw.
Green pepper, it was for a very short period, mainly because it is highly perishable than butternut. Immediately after we had restricted, we experienced a heat wave that lasted for about 3 weeks, and the green pepper that was ready got spoiled.
Spoilages.
And thereafter we experienced heavy rains that lasted for about 2 to 3 weeks again. So still green pepper got damaged by the excessive rains. So we had to uplift the restriction because local supply was no longer enough to meet local demand.
You've touched on an interesting one, which is around the issue of climate change as well. I think as you are looking into supporting farmers to grow or even join, are we encouraging farmers to look into investing in greenhouses, for instance, the farming of using systems that are likely to mitigate the impact of climate change?
Oh yes, of course. Under the Ministry of Agriculture, there is a program aimed at capacitating farmers on climate smart agriculture, because those are responses to the climate change. So under shelter production is still part of climate smart agricultural practices. So we are also encouraging farmers to farm under shelter, be it shade nets. Those ones are less expensive. Those that can afford, they are encouraged to farm under tunnels. Greenhouses, it's a little sophisticated and very costly. We don't encourage farmers to go into greenhouses. However, because tunnels are also fairly expensive, we encourage farmers to focus on high value commodities. Those that will go into tunnel production. We do have quite a number of farmers that are already producing under tunnels as well as shade nets. And interestingly, we have young people doing that are already doing farming under tunnels and farming under shade nets. It would be interesting for you to visit those farmers as well,
Yeah.
We also, as NAMBoard, we have also supported farmers at the Lunzi.
Yes.
In partnership with MTN Eswatini.
Yes.
There is a project for the youth doing tunnel farming, and it is coming up and inspirational to other young people.
Yeah. No, interestingly, we actually have that documentary from those farmers when they started 2 years ago, I think.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, we did visit them, and I think my interest as was starting to do this was I want to see how that is going. So that project is doing well in Lunzi.
Now it's doing well. It started off with meeting quite a number of challenges. As you know, youth-focused project would encounter a number of challenges. That we need a lot of mentorship and holding.
Yeah.
The tunnels were found also not sufficient to sustain the production.
Okay.
So they've also accessed funding from the Regional Development Fund, and they've expanded their tunnel.
Oh, good.
So their production has improved substantially.
Okay. Now let's talk about global gap. The standards, I think we're already talking export, so the standards are important. How is NAMBoard assisting farmers to, just tell us more about that program and how it's going?
Thank you. That's another very exciting achievement of us as NAMBoard. Firstly, I would explain why we had to venture into that program. As we engage export markets in particular, they are beginning to demand that the produce must be global gap compliant or global gap certified.
Yeah.
And as marketers of farmers' produce, we were beginning to find it difficult to access some of those markets because they required the global gap certification as an entry requirement.
Yes.
And while NAMBoard is global gap certified, the markets were challenging us to the effect that NAMBoard is not producing these vegetables.
It's the farmers.
It is the farmers who are producing these vegetables. Are the farmers global gap certified? The answer was no.
Yeah.
So to us, it was a do or die.
Yeah.
If we did not venture into this program, our farmers were going to lose markets, in particular export markets.
Yeah.
So we took the initiative to mobilize and engage other stakeholders to get support. Global gap certification is expensive.
Yeah.
That certification does not come cheap. So no ordinary farmer would have capacity can afford it.
Yeah.
So as NAMBoard, we took it upon ourselves as a government entity to assist farmers to access a global gap certification. We got support funding from the International Trade Center, and we partnered with them. We also partnered with Eswatini Standards Authority, who are the custodians for standards locally.
Yes. Yeah.
They are the ones providing the training. Our aim is to train farmers. We made a call out to farmers to express their interest and register to be considered for the training. We received a total number of about 400 farmers showing interest.
Okay.
All the farmers were trained, and awareness was created to them, and the standards was separated into two. We are training the farmers on local gap standards to then further advance into the global gap. So all the farmers were trained on the local gap standards, but then we made a selection amongst them as limited by our budget to then select 60 farmers who are going to then qualify to be trained for global gap certification. So we have made the selection, and trainings have begun for the 60 farmers to then eventually qualify into global gap certification. That one is quite a lengthy process. It takes about 18 months to finish that process until a farmer receives a global gap certification. So if once farmers receive those certificates, their produce would access international markets anywhere.
Yeah.
And second, it means the produce coming from those farmers is safe,
Yes.
and it is meeting the quality standards that they need.
Sure.
While those that could not make it to global gap would only qualify for the local gap. So we are also in the process developing local gap standards,
Right.
which we are going to use to measure for farmers to access the local markets using the local gap standards.
So I'm sure you cannot tell us everything about the standard, but what are the highlights? What can a farmer consider if they want to join the global gap? What do they need to have?
Thank you. Firstly, one would say global gap simply means the gap simply means good agricultural practices.
Okay.
So now, it is a health. It also includes quality, safety, and health.
Yes.
Meaning the produce that must come from the farmer must be safe for human consumption. It must be healthy for human consumption.
Yeah.
So the attributes of global gap requires a farmer to have a separated farm from the homestead. That's the first requirement. So meaning the farm must be fenced off from the homestead, so that a farmer cannot have domestic animals accessing the farm.
Yeah.
Because as you know, we have other fresh produce that are eaten as raw. So if a dog defecates on a cabbage, when it is already ready for market, the farmer comes pick up that cabbage. You can now imagine what kind of safety.
Makes sense.
It also requires that the fields must have ablution facilities for the laborers.
The fields, meaning within the farm.
Within the farm.
Okay.
There must be ablution facilities which laborers will access without traveling long distances.
All right.
So if one may say, I have ablution facilities in the homestead, but if it is quite a distance from the farm, then it does not qualify.
Okay.
Remember, this is business. So for one to travel 10 minutes to get to ablution facilities, that is a waste of time.
Wasted,
so the farmer is already making losses. It also requires that the farmer must have facilities that will store chemicals separately from fertilizers and other utensils used in the farm, because fertilizers some are poisonous. So those are part of the safety and health standards to ensure that it doesn't at any point happen that the chemicals will come into contact with the produce.
I see.
So those, in a nutshell, those are the requirements of global gap.
The key ones.
So it also requires that the farmer, the laborers must be properly dressed in protective clothing, so that they are also safe while working in the farm. So it's general good agricultural practices that qualifies a farmer to be global gap, and then adhering to the other standards that would require the farmer to use certain chemicals and not use some chemicals that are not registered for some of the products. So those are now much details in terms of the standard.
Thank you. I think we will get there. The farmers, of course, they also have to put an effort to be able to qualify, and I think it's the route that you've charted to say, let's actually go this way so that we can actually grow.
It's true.
You talked earlier about the horticulture information system as one of your successes.
Yes.
So I think my question would be, how is that going in terms of uptake? How many farmers have we already kind of enrolled into that program? And how is it helping NAMBoard in terms of its planning and program?
Thank you. Eswatini Horticulture Information System, shortly called EHIS, is mainly aimed at data collection and capturing.
Yeah.
At the comfort of a farmer's home or his farm, yes.
Yeah.
You'll recall that I mentioned that NAMBoard is a regulator.
Yes.
In the horticulture space, regulating all scheduled products. So now, in order to regulate properly and accurately, we need accurate data.
Yes.
I've just mentioned that we are currently restricting importation of butternut.
Butternut, yes.
In order to restrict butternut, you must ensure that there is enough supply by local farmers.
Yeah.
So that when you restrict importation, there is no outcry in the markets that there is shortage of that particular commodity.
Exactly.
So you need to be sure that this commodity is in abundant, is in adequate supply to meet local demand. So you need statistics, you need data.
Yeah.
That was one of our greatest nightmare before, because it was difficult to get accurate data to play our regulatory function properly. So the first important use of the system is to enable farmers to voluntarily register and mention the products they have planted, planting dates, the volumes they have planted, their projected harvesting dates, and the varieties they have planted, so that once they register, our officers then go out to verify and inspect. Because again, if data is not checked, it can be misleading as well.
I can write my own things sitting at home and it doesn't exist. Yeah.
So we are now better able to play our regulatory function using AHIS, because we simply go to the system to see which commodities have been planted and when are they going to be ready.
Yes.
We verify and then advise the markets in good advance that we are going to restrict these commodities beginning from this date, because we have assurance that it will be available in the markets. That is why even after restricting, we don't stop checking with our farmers, because farmers would encounter different catastrophes from time to time. So you would know that I'm expecting butternut from these farmers at this month, only to find that some of them have been hit by a disease and cannot harvest that produce. Some of them have been hit by hailstorm. The produce is no longer available. So we need to constantly check to verify. So immediately there is change in our projections, we then take a decision to either uplift the suspension or shift it forward.
Great.
We also use AHIS to capture data on the number of farmers that are producing specific produce, and the markets are also able to access the system to identify the market, the farmers where they are, so that they can literally go and buy from the farmers without having to go through NAMBoard. As NAMBoard, it is not our mandate to buy produce from farmers and sell to the markets.
Yes.
Our mandate is to facilitate marketing of the farmers' produce.
Yes.
So that is what we are driving towards, to ensure that farmers and markets do not have to be linked by NAMBoard all the time. They must connect independently of NAMBoard.
Just facilitate.
So through this platform, the markets are now able to see where the farmers are, which produce is available, and then engage directly. Lastly, excuse me, one would also say even agro dealers are able to use the system to identify the farmers and start engaging them to make deals with the farmers, and even bring the farming inputs closer to the farmers, because they are in business, they must market and go out to markets to the farmers. Currently we have registered about 2,000 400 farmers on the system, and we are still counting. Our desire is to have every horticulture farmer register with EHIS, so that we are able to take decisions based on the informed data that farmers have given us through the system. One would also allay fears from the farmers, Mr. Mugati. Some of the farmers are still reluctant to register because they say from this platform NAMBoard is then going to take their information to for taxation purposes as well as to other regulatory bodies. One would allay those fears to farmers to say we do not, we still maintain our confidentiality when we deal with our farmers. When we capture data with them, we don't then share it with external stakeholders without their permission. We use it solely for marketing and regulatory purposes as NAMBoard.
Yeah, but then again, I think it's important for businesses, including farming businesses, to comply. And tax compliance is important. I think also you are right that the information must be kept confidential, but I think we also need to teach our farmers that compliance is important.
It is important, and it is a requirement. However, it is not part of our responsibility as NAMBoard to force farmers to go and do the requirement on their side to pay tax. They still have that obligation to pay tax. We still promote that from the farmers.
Mr. MAZIYA, thank you so much for your time. I think there's a lot of issues when it comes to agriculture, horticulture in particular. So we can sit here and talk for the whole day, but I really appreciate your time just allowing us to have this chat. I think it will help others to understand where NAMBoard is going. As our leader, we want to follow and make sure that we can achieve what the government has actually said, that we want to achieve food sovereignty. Ultimately stop the imports. I mean, 2 billion is a lot of money.
It is.
You can imagine the unemployment situation. If that money were to come in the country, would go a long way.
A lot of Maswati would get employment out of that amount.
So thank you very much.
Pleasure.
I really appreciate. I think for us as Asilimeni Maswati, we appreciate that you could join us today and catch us in the next episode. Thank you.